One of my best tools when it comes to making guys better at dating, whether it's texting a girl, going on dates, holding conversations, being sexy, knowing when she wants to go home with him, when she's open to being kissed, all these little things that fall under the umbrella of, being a better dater. One of my best tools in making a guy better is to listen to my own emotional reception of him. Basically, in other words, saying, do I find my client annoying? Do I find him boring? Do I find him interesting? Do I find him charismatic? And I take those emotions and then very easily can just translate that to, well, this is probably how women are going to receive you. So if I respect you or find you interesting, women are going to translate that to finding you sexy or cute or hot. And the translation is pretty accurate because of how attraction works. Things that you find cool and respectable in another guy, more often than not, women are also going to find it as those things, but then because she's a straight woman who's attracted to men, is going to find them sexy or cool. And very often, respect and admiration and just enjoying being around you turns into attraction. Now, being sexy is a particular skill, but it's something that's very rare. Very few guys pull off being sexy. Most of the time, they just end up being attractive to girls, right? And then that evolves into being sexy because, again, they're a straight woman, so that's gonna turn into sexual attraction. But this kind of equation or this formula that I have, it seems to work really, really well. And sometimes my clients don't understand that because I'll tell him, hey, you know what, this is how you come off and this and that. And they'll go, oh, well, I'm kind of different, when I'm talking to girls. And I'm like, I don't think so. And I've actually proven this right because I've had guys record themselves talking to a girl or even being on a date. And then I listen to him and I'm like, yeah, you don't sound like too different than you do when you're talking to me, right? I mean, you sound definitely more interested or more energetic because, you're trying to fuck her, whereas you're just listening to me talk and we're man to man, but you pretty much have the same mannerisms and vocal tonalities. It's the same fucking thing, okay? And this really helps me because there's the skill of like, what does a woman mean when she says this? Or, why did she stop texting me? And these are things that I know from experience, or I can just put them together based on the context because I've seen so many scenarios and kind of have like the equation to everything because I have the foundational equation and then all the rest of the things are just like permutations of the understanding of like how women work. That's one half of the dating coaching, right? But the other dating coaching is looking at the guy himself and saying, okay, what's going to be the best version of him? And then if you work in that direction, it solves a lot of these things. You need this. You need to know like how to deal with the situation, how to have a good conversation, how to text a girl, right? Dating skills. But you also need to know, okay, how am I going to move forward and take this personality and just make it better? Without changing it too much, right? Because this guy is not going to become like me. I might meet a client who has similar characteristics to me, and then it's like, okay, that's pretty easy. Like, you can kind of follow my model. But then I'll have guys who are totally different than me, but that's fine. I just need to look at what you have and then bring it to your own personal 10 out of 10. What would you look like if you had a similar personality, similar sense of humor and this and that, but just were better at executing it? So that second half is kind of what I'm talking about in this video, is I look at a client and I say, you need to do this better, and you need to change this. You need to cut this. And even sometimes I'll say, just stop it for now. I know this is a thing that you like to do, and it's a mannerism or a behavior or a sense of humor or whatever. You like to be very poetic in your talking, or you're not energetic at all. And I need you to put that to the side for now and try to do the other extreme and pull this a little bit here because this isn't working. This is a turnoff to girls. I just know it is because of I've had so many clients and had so many experiences with myself and friends and people who I, saw succeeding or failing with girls. So you need to kind of change this, right? Then later on, you can go back to it and then you'll meet somewhere in the middle and it'll still be effective, but then you'll still be yourself that makes you more comfortable, right? Or not. Maybe you'll really transform and you'll find that you like this behavior even more than this. You just, had growing pains, right? So I'll just talk to a client and I'll be like, dude, you're fucking annoying. Like, you annoy me. And this has been my, kind of my go-to trick when it came to clients forever. But I had to learn how to package it correctly because it can come off really insulting. It's one thing to say, oh, girls are like this, or she goes like this, or she thought this way about you. And then it's another thing altogether to look at him and say, I don't like you. I find you annoying. And there are some clients who I just like better than others. I definitely have my favorites. I still do my job. And in fact, I can even, maybe I can do just as good of a job or even better of a job with the guy who I don't like because I really see him objectively, right? So I've actually learned this lesson with a client who came back to me recently, and we worked together I think the first time we worked together was about 2.5 years ago. Yeah. And then there's another client who I work with for 5 years, and he just came back. I have a lot of repeat customers, which I guess is a good thing. I do have some bad stories with clients, though. It's actually a running joke that I always have one problematic client every year. I haven't really had mine this year yet, so I guess it's coming. But this one client who I talked to about 2.5 years ago, he's a really good example of this. Just me looking at you and saying, I think you're fucking annoying, and girls probably see you the same way, right? And then you should change things about yourself because you're not living up to your potential because of these things that give me the ick or annoy me or bore me or kind of freak me out. So it was this guy, and one of his issues was he had a really hard time seeing other people's perspectives on things, right? He was always kind of the woe is me. I'm the victim. People are, people don't know my intentions. I didn't mean to say that or come off that way. And people kind of bully me, right? And it made sense because of his history. He had told me kind of his childhood story where he moved around and then he went to the city and he was kind of an outcast. And so he always kind of felt like the outsider and the loner. But then he got, older and he learned some things, and then he started hanging out with social circles, which was his main way of gaming girls. Social circle and going out at night. And he would have situations where guys in the social circle would get mad at him, right? You would have the ones where he dated a girl in the social circle and then they broke up and they all went with the girl. And I'm like, okay, well, that's just fucking normal, right? But also to a certain extent, you probably weren't doing something right. You probably didn't create a really good bond with them. But there was one story in particular that it finally was the final straw. And I was like, dude, I have to tell you this, right? I had kind of been telling him along the lines that he's really stubborn and he doesn't fucking listen. But this is when it really changed. So the story was he was playing volleyball with some guy friends and some girls. And I don't know if they invited the girls out or they found them while they were playing volleyball. But basically, they played the game. They were flirting the whole time, and then the girls were going to leave. And the one guy wanted to ask the girl out, but he was gun shy and, pussyfooting, and he didn't go through with it. So my client was just like, all right, fine. I'll just get her information and just have her as a social friend and then, use her as pre-selection, right? Have a cute girl around, and it's going to help you find other cute girls. He didn't really intend to go after her and didn't really particularly want her. But when he walked up to her and got her Instagram, and then they left, his friend, the other guy, got pissed at him and kind of let him know how he felt. And he was like, well, what the fuck? Why is this guy being, so angry and aggressive? And I was like, you really don't see, how you could have pissed him off? And he's like, well, no, I don't get it. I wasn't trying to hit on her. I let him flirt with her the whole time. da-da-da-da-da. And I said, look, man. First of all, you're probably the biggest player in your group, right? You're the guy who's always going to talk to girls, right? He's like, well, yeah. And he's like, I'm sure you have that reputation, right? He's like, yeah, I guess, if you put it that way. And I was like, okay, so if the biggest player in the group walks up to a girl that you were trying to flirt with and asks for her Instagram, don't you fucking think he's going to come to the conclusion that you're trying to swoop in and grab her? Well, yeah, but that wasn't my intention. I said, that doesn't fucking matter. That's how it came off. And you're not aware of that. Yeah, well, it should matter. People should care about my perspective. And he didn't want to listen to me. And I was like, well, you're not listening to him. I was trying to explain to him that he was kind of complaining and crying the victim that no one listens to him. And then I was like, but you can't see his side? He's like, well, no, because, mine is right. And I was like, no, it's not. It was like, your intention is clear to you because you're in your own head, but it's not clear to this other guy, right? Now, Should this guy, if he was a perfect human being, also be open to your perspective? Yeah, but you can't control that. He's not my client. You are. And he really was stubborn about this. And I had to kind of get real with him. And I was like, dude, you're fucking annoying. I told him straight up. I was like, you're really an annoying guy. Like, you asked for my advice, and then I'm giving you my advice, and you keep fighting me on it. And it was a pattern that he would do a lot. Like, I would give him advice and he would almost start arguing with me. Not like a disrespectful, like, you're wrong, but he'll start to clarify and be like, well, you're missing this detail, or you're missing this detail. Maybe that'll change your opinion. And I'm like, no, I'm fucking right. I know what I'm talking about. And this doesn't only happen to me. I have a coach who coaches me on Dota. It's like League of Legends, but for men, not children. And he tells me that a lot of his clients will give them fucking advice, and then they'll argue with him and tell him he's wrong. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, you're an 8K immortal, which is like fucking pretty damn close to being professional at Dota, right? Top 1% of the 1%. And I'm like, how are they? And they're fucking archons, they're like very average or lower than average. Why are they arguing with you? He's like, I don't know. And I'm like, well, it's a pretty common thing, actually, right? For people to be stubborn, even with someone that they want to learn from and are paying to learn from. And so I finished that client, and I kind of finally got through to him there because I explained it in a way that he understood where I was coming from, and it wasn't purely an insult, but it definitely did hurt him. And so we finished up our coaching about 2 years ago. We started 2.5 years ago, and then, yeah. Well, he recently came back. I think earlier this year we started coaching again, sometime in like April or something. And so we're about to finish up our this session and then start another one because, he's finally really making some progress. Well, when he came back to me this time, he was very different. He actually told me up front, he was like, man, I just want to tell you, like, when you gave me that harsh, tough love 2 years ago, he's like, that really helped me a lot, like way more than you can imagine. And I really want to tell you how appreciative I am that you were so honest with me about how I was coming off. And after our working together, I realized how fucking stubborn I am, how much I lacked humility and willingness to learn, and also how I didn't really consider other people's perspectives. And he's like, I really broke down a big wall with that. And so I want to say thank you. And, I want to work together with you again because, it's really helpful and I want to get better. And it was nice for me to see that because other times I'll tell guys things and it'll hit a wall and I can almost break through it, and then they'll like fight back, and I'll have a problematic client who gets mad at me for telling him something he didn't want to hear because I know what the fuck I'm talking about. I'm not wrong. At this point, I'm pretty much never wrong. And so we were working together, I think it was yesterday or a few days ago, on one of our last sessions for this group of calls. And he was, what was he doing? We were talking about, he was going to approach some girls, and he was having a lot of approach anxiety. And so he was struggling with that. And then, so we just got into like a psychological breakdown of like why you have approach anxiety. Why do you feel all of these ways about approaching? Like, you're, like, do you think you're doing something wrong by going up to a girl and, giving her a compliment, and basically you're chasing after sex? Like, do you feel shame around your sexuality? We were really breaking it down into a very deep level, and it seemed to help a lot. But one of the topics that came up while we were talking was essentially him saying, I wish that girls would tell me what I did wrong, right? So that I could improve. Why won't girls just like tell you, you did this wrong, or did this wrong, or did this wrong, and then, help you improve? And I was like, okay, first of all, you're asking a lot. Okay. You're asking for some random girl to, first of all, give a shit enough to actually like sit there and help you. Right. And then also be smart enough and self-reflective and self-aware enough to be like, okay, well, he made me feel this way. And because he made me feel this way, this means that he needs to work on this and that and that. And I'm like, dude, like, you're asking for a lot. Okay. But then I was like, and also, who's to say you would fucking listen? I mean, the chances of you listening to that are very low. You're probably going to be like, well, fuck you, bitch, da-da-da-da-da. And what's funny is I've actually had this thought before. I'm like, oh, I wish girls were more honest with me. Well, there was times in my life when girls were honest with me. And you know what I did a lot of those times? I got mad. Now, eventually I listened to it because that's how I got so good. I had the ability to like, you know, turn my personality upside down and really work against my own internal resistances to flaws in my character. But a lot of times when it first came, I was like, nope. Right. And even when I was intentionally going for it, I'd be like, well, what do you think about this? And they're like, well, this is how I think of it. And I'd get defensive, not in like an aggressive way. I'd be like, well, I think you're misinterpreting me and da 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 da. And people were always telling me this. Like, I had a literature professor who told me like the way I argue is very aggressive, and I need to choose my words carefully, not because I'm wrong, but because of the effect it has on other people. And I would have the attitude of like, well, it doesn't matter. If they can't fucking handle the heat, they should get out of the fucking kitchen. But most people are not going to be operating that on that level. And if I'm going to sit around and cry that people are like spreading gossip around about me or getting upset with me and don't want to be friends with me because I'm kind of harsh with my language, well, then I either need to adapt or I need to accept that that's going to be a consequence. And so I myself went through a lot of this. So that's why I'm an expert in telling you to, shut up and listen when it's good advice. Even if the person doesn't know exactly what you need to change, that person's instinct, that their emotional reaction tells you there is something wrong. So I was explaining to him, and I was like, the chances of you even listening, if she did take the time to tell you, are very low. And I said, case in fucking point, 2 years ago, you were paying me to coach you, and you still wouldn't fucking listen to me. You were paying me thousands of dollars to teach you coaching and sit there with you and go through scenarios and teach you how to be better with, making friends and conversation and girls, and you wouldn't fucking listen to me. You argue with me half the time. And only at the end, I broke through your wall and you stopped being such a stubborn son of a bitch. And he found that funny. He's like, yeah, you're right, da-da-da-da-da. And he's like, I need to, but that's a big change that I've made, da-da-da. And so he's not going to get his wish that girls are going to suddenly become very, I guess in teacher mode and want to teach you. And then he's probably not going to listen to them because he may have broken down his pride when it comes to me, but maybe not some random chick. But the lesson in there was how powerful it was to listen to my own emotional reaction to someone. Like if I were talking to you and we got on a phone call, I'd be like, yeah, you're fucking boring, right? Which is what I got into a conversation with a different client of mine who we've been working together on and off for like 5 years. We'd have big breaks in between, but we first started working together like 5 or even 6 years ago. And he's made a lot of progress. He's dated some really hot girls, even one girl who was like a, kind of a celebrity in his part of the world. And but recently we've been kind of honing in on the fact that he's not really sexy, right? He's cool and he's successful and he's a interesting guy, but he hasn't quite nailed that like I'm a sexy guy kind of thing. And so we're starting to work on that, and also how to close, how to actually finish, when you're on a date with a girl. And that's a very difficult skill to have because it's kind of like one of the foundations of seduction. But you can't really get there until you fix these things first. It's very hard to just be sexy out the gate. You have to learn all these basic skills, and then you can add sexiness. It's kind of like the cherry on top. It's a very big cherry, and it takes a lot of work to get there, but you need the other things first, because if you just try to start being sexy, it's just not going to work. You're going to be creepy. Because creepiness really at the end of the day is unwanted attention or unwanted advances, right? And so if you don't build that basic level of attraction and being able to make a bond with someone, if you try to start making all these advances, it's not supported by anything. So it's just going to fall and you're just going to be creepy and get rejected. So we were working on this, and starting from this last call and the call before it, I kind of just had to tell him, you're kind of boring. And he knows me well enough to know that hurts, but it's very helpful. And I'm like, yeah, dude, you don't really show any emotion. You're kind of like too chill, which helps in a lot of ways, but then it hurts you in a lot of ways. And I'm like, if you want to become sexy, you're going to have to push past that. And also he cares too much about his reputation, because in his part of the world, or like his city, he's kind of like part of the higher echelon of people, with regards to socioeconomic status. And I was like, well, you care too much about your reputation, so you're never going to be able to be that guy, because in order to be that guy, you're going to have to take risks, right? Other men are going to become a little bit leery of you because you're kind of like that, sexual tiger, and you kind of have that energy all the time, because you can't just like 40 hours a week be this guy, and then on the weekends you suddenly, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, you just fucking go werewolf and be this sex werewolf, right? when the fucking moon is out. You can't do that. Like, you kind of have to change your entire approach to life and be a more sexual person in general. It's like, so if you want to make this transformation, it's going to be a transformation. It's not going to be something that, you know, you just do on the weekend. And so you're going to have to look at yourself and admit and accept that you're fucking, you know, boring and you don't really have any sexual energy at all, and then start building it with, you know, the tips that I give him. And so I was kind of reminded again of this trick that I have where I listen to a guy and I watch him and I get to know him, but usually I'm pretty fucking fast at figuring it out. And I just go, okay, this is how I view him, and this is probably how women view him. And you need to fucking change it because you annoy me, so you're definitely going to annoy women. So how do you use this to your advantage? Well, you can do coaching with me, right? And nothing is going to beat that, right? Because I have the eye and the knowledge that is 10 times better than all of you combined. But not all of you are going to do that. If you are interested in that, you can sign up for a consultation. It's in the description below. I am pricey. If just based on that you go, maybe I can't afford him, then you probably can't afford me, right? But if you do have some extra money and you're willing to invest time and energy and money, then I would suggest signing up for a consultation with the link below in the description. It should say something like phone coaching Hector pre-sale or something like that. You'll see it. It's probably the first thing. And you sign up for a consultation. We'll get on the phone and I'll do my magic and kind of analyze you. And you'll probably ask me to give you free advice and go, well, what do you think I need to change? And then I'm going to say, well, paywall. If you want to get the wisdom, you got to, you know, pay for it. It's a game that I play with a lot of people. And I used to lose the game a lot. Honestly, I've given so many people advice. Occasionally, I'll just help a guy because, you know, I feel like helping a guy. Don't sign up for a consultation thinking that. I will immediately know that you signed up for that purpose because guys do sign up for that purpose to try and get free information. And I can smell it a mile away and I'll end the call very quickly. But I used to give a lot of people super free advice. And, you know, I used to sit on Instagram for fucking weeks and months just giving advice. I've given away thousands of hours of advice for free. Those days are mostly over outside of occasional, you know, times when I feel like I really want to help this guy for X or Y reason. But yeah, if you want to sign up for coaching, that's the best way to do it. I know exactly what you need to improve your dating life, whatever you want. You want to be a playboy, you want to have a relationship, you want to get married. I can help you with everything because I fucking got it all. I'm just the best, okay? And I know it, and I charge for that level. So if you don't sign up for coaching for whatever reason, here's what I would do. I would look back at all the times when someone didn't want to be your friend, someone got bored in conversation with you, stopped paying attention to you, a girl went with a different guy, a girl broke up with you, a girl was seeing you, stopped seeing you, whatever level of rejection it happened right at the beginning, in the middle of your friendship or relationship or seduction, at the end, after years, whatever. Try to look back at as many examples as possible. And what I would do if you don't have a really good memory is I would start to write things down. Like one of the best tools that I used in my career was writing reports. And it's basically just a story. You write like a little story of what happened. I was out on a Friday night and, you know, I got all dressed up and I was feeling good and this and that. I sent the context, you know, this is how I was feeling. I went out to approach some girls. I did an approach. This happened. I did an approach. This happened. Then on my third approach, she really liked me. But then after 10 minutes, her friends came and got her. And then I didn't know what to do. Then I met this other girl and we got in this conversation. She said this. I said this. She said this. As much detail as fucking possible, right? If you're not willing to sit down and go over your memories and your experiences, you're not going to learn. Okay. If you want to cut down on that time, you got to pay someone to do it for you, which is why coaching is, you know, really helpful because you don't have to sit there and think. I can just fucking tell you what it is. But if you don't want coaching, you got to do it yourself. So you have to go through these experiences, okay? And you have to break down the point where you lost her or where the beginning of the end began, right? Like a friendship started to sour. Be like, okay, when did it start to sour? Oh, around this time, I started to notice that he was acting this way. Okay, well, what were some things that were going on? And at some point, it's something that you did. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean you did something wrong. This is a very important point that no one fucking gets. you didn't necessarily do something wrong, like you were an asshole, you were, you betrayed his trust, or, you started neglecting him, right? Sometimes it can be that, and you have to be honest with yourself if it is that. But it's not always something that you did morally wrong, or even, well, it was skillfully wrong on some level. There was something in their perception of you that changed. I'll give you an example. When I left college, my fraternity and I were kind of like a strained relationship. And a lot of it was their fault, and a lot of it was my fault. But I'll point out the part that was my fault. So around junior year, I found the pickup community, and I started really focusing on it, because I'd always been kind of a playboy, or started to become one as I went through college. But then I wanted to be better, and then I found that there was an actual like fucking field behind this, right? So this is back in like the end of 2013. Summer of 2013 is when I first found it, and then that was, when it started to go off the rails, and I started, just putting my entire energy into reading every Girls Chase article, and I read other people too, but I mostly focused on Girls Chase, and then eventually became fully Girls Chase, because Chase teaches the best shit. And I started becoming way focused on that. And also what happened was, because I started becoming so popular, I started becoming friends with so many other people. And so I had so much time. And while unfortunately a lot of my fraternity brothers were not hanging out with cute girls and not really doing anything except for sitting around smoking weed and watching Bruno or Borat for the 11th millionth time. It was literally called The Movie in our fraternity. Hey, what do you want to do? Let's get high and watch The Movie. Bruno, okay, or Borat. And it was cute and funny, and they had like a very comfortable life, but I wasn't interested in that. I wanted to go out and meet people, and especially hot girls, and get as much social experience as possible. It's fucking college, right? So I started going out and hanging out with other fraternities, the ones who are usually more social, and I started getting way more experience and becoming super popular. That was part of what snowballed me, because I was friends with so many different people in so many circles. It kind of catapulted and built this huge pyramid of social status. Unfortunately, I didn't also do it with the most compassionate of energy. I kind of started to be a bit rude and callous towards my fraternity brothers, because I did look down on them for being unambitious. I could have done it a lot more gently, but I didn't. And towards the end, even after I was, elected president, and I was really doing my best to help them, but also didn't enjoy hanging out with them. And they obviously noticed, and, they would talk shit about me, but they were too much of pussies to actually say it to my face, which is totally their fault. That I can 100% put on their shoulders. But it was my fault to do it in the way that I did it. Or, even if I would have did it perfectly, there were still going to be some people who didn't like it. But I need to understand that that's why. And I was actually informed by this when I graduated, and one of my little brothers, something in a fraternity where, you help them through pledge season. So they become your little brother and you're their big brother. And one of my little brothers, I caught him on like a Facebook group chat talking shit about me. And I was like, really? Like, I've been nothing but amazing to you. And he knew that I found out, and then he sent me a big apology message. He was like, you know what? I'm sorry. That was really shitty of me. I shouldn't have been talking shit on you. But I'll be honest with you, I was really hurt that my big brother wasn't really hanging out with me anymore, or really hanging out with the fraternity anymore. It kind of felt like you changed as a person. And he's like, and I'm like, I have. And I was like, but that doesn't mean you should like betray me and talk shit about me. And he's like, you're right. And he's like, I see that you're enjoying what you do, right? You enjoy this life, and I'm happy for you, and I want you to be the best at it. But I want to tell you why it hurt me, right? And, that was really helpful. And he went about it in a cool way, and I also love him, so, I listened to what he said. But that was a moment where I could either listen to it and learn something from it, or reject it and just be like, you're a piece of shit, right? But I listened to it, and I realized, and then also I started writing my college book, which I'm rewriting right now. It's a huge fucking book. It's like 800 pages, so I already rewrote it once, and then I'm rewriting it again right now. So bear with me. It'll come out when it comes out. I've had some people, a lot of people message me about when it comes out. It'll come out when it comes out. I'm just going to tell you that. When I was writing it, I was able to really review what happened in college. And I really understood how all of my problems came about. Right? Now, did a lot of people lie about me and or something was true, but they blew it out of proportion. They warped it. A lot of slander and lies and gossip. Yeah. And they have to deal with the consequences of all of that, right? There is karmic consequences for all of that. But I did also create a lot of my own trouble because of my behavior and my attitude, right? Even if I didn't necessarily do something morally wrong, right? I didn't pick the most skillful of approaches to a social situation or a romantic situation. And so in reflecting on that while writing my book and then also getting new experiences and looking back, I learned so much about myself. And then I got to the point where, like, I was pretty open to changing anything about myself. Like, I was like, okay, let's treat my personality like it's completely wide open, right? If this moves me in the right direction that I want to go in, and as long as it's moral, right, then I'm going to go in that direction. Now, if it's something I enjoy doing, then obviously I'm going to prefer this path and try to make it skillful. But if I have to change something about myself, even if I don't enjoy it, but it brings me closer to what I want, then I'm probably going to have to do that. Now, probably exaggerating when I say 100%, because if that was true, then, you know, I would be a robot who's just full efficiency. So that's not completely true. I got to be honest. Most of my personality is up for grabs if it brings me in the direction that I like. I think, right? I guess I got to leave a lot of room for my own delusions and stubbornness, but a lot more than other people. That I can for fucking guarantee you, because I have changed and warped myself more than anyone else I've ever met. So you have to review all of your negative and successful and positive experiences and figure out why they worked. Why did your personality and all of its expressions and facets work in that situation? Why did you become friends with that person? Why did that girl like you? Why did that girl not like you? Why did that person not want to be around you? Many times they're going to be guilty. Well, they got jealous, or they're fucking haters, or, you know, they're a piece of shit and they didn't want to be around someone who, you know, was a good person, or, you know, they were lazy and unambitious and I was ambitious. There's a lot of these situations that can happen, sure. But you still should understand why they responded the way they responded. Because if you just take the perspective of, like, this is like one of the like pretty standard dating advices is, we don't have to play all these games and do this. Just find people who like you, and if they don't like you, well, it wasn't meant to be. That's retarded, okay? For way more reasons than it's worth getting into right now. But if you hold that perspective, you're literally just, you know, rolling dice with every situation you're going into. There's no skill or thought involved. It's a very narcissistic worldview, because you are implying, it's probably one of the main reasons why it's stupid. You're kind of implying you're always doing something right. Well, if someone isn't right for me, then, you know, they're just not meant to be. Or if you take it to the extreme where people are like, well, if you don't like me, well, fuck them. What you're insinuating with that is that I'm right 100% of the time. And if they don't like me, or they don't, you know, are not friends with me, they're in the wrong because I'm in the right. That's it. That's an implied premise in that. Because if you weren't 100% right, you would say, well, sometimes other people are right not to like me because there's something wrong with me. That if you were honest with yourself, then that's what you would say. But by saying pretty much I'm always, or anyone who doesn't like me is wrong or wasn't meant to be, you're implying that you're always correct. You're always in the right, which is obviously not true. So you need to look back on your experiences and try to get as much detail. What went wrong and what went right, and what do I have to change? Now, I dedicated my fucking entire, you know, from 18 to basically 28, and even now, but now I do it from more of a teacher's perspective because I pretty much got everything I wanted to get. Pretty much besides that and like philosophy and Buddhism and video games, I put my entire attention on that. Social skills, including women, playing games, and figuring out the answer to life. I put my entire fucking attention on that. Nonstop, pretty much every fucking day. And I was a bit of a prodigy too. I really succeeded very early, and then I also put in the work of someone who is a total beginner. So I got to a very, very high level. I don't say I've met anyone who I think is better than me at this point. So, you can bypass a lot of your thinking by just working with me. But if not, you need to sit there and work through it slowly and methodically. If you don't, fuck that shit, fuck this guy, right? You already clicked off the video fucking 15 minutes ago, right? How many people are actually watching it at this point? Very few. Give me a shout out in the comment if you actually made it to 35 minutes and 10 seconds or whatever. Give me some sort of keyword. Let's say pineapple. give me a fucking no. Actually, no. You know what I'm gonna do? Give me a Felipe. Was that his name? I think it was his name though. You know, I said I was gonna put him in all the videos, and then I never put him in another video. I think this is Felipe, if I remember correctly. So, or I should call it. I almost said Pedro. The what was I gonna say? The pickle, but he's not a pickle. It's a fucking cucumber. What's a Latino name with a C? Christian? No. I mean it is, but just put eggplant in the or Felipe, the eggplant or Felipe. Give me some sort of like shout out that you actually made it to this part of the video, because I'm really curious if anyone actually lasts this long. That's what she said. Fucking got him. So, the fuck was I going on about? Oh yeah, if you're like, you know, that's too much work. I mean, yeah, okay. Well, you're never gonna get better, because I have people who like get consultations for coaching, and you know they'll be like, oh, it's too expensive, or this or that, or you know what, I need to. It's either it's too expensive, or the other one is, well, like technically I can afford it, but you know, I think I should figure this out on my own. And I'm like, why did you contact me then? Like, I had this one guy. He contacted me like 4 years ago in COVID, and then back then I was a much cheaper price. I was $4,000 for 12 calls, and he didn't end up working with me. And the only reason I know that is because he contacted me a couple weeks ago, or like a month ago, and we did a consultation. And I was like, I know this guy. We had talked last year in 2023, and I was let's see, was I $6,000 then? Yeah, I was $6,000, so you know it was a bit more expensive then. And he didn't sign up because it's too expensive or whatever. I'm like, okay. And then he contacted me again like a month ago or a month and a half ago, and then now I'm $10,000 for 12 calls. But then I offered 24 calls, and that's kind of what I do now. I give you 6 months of coaching for 10. I think it's a pretty fair trade. It's a lot of money, but I give you a lot of value in return. He's like, oh, well, I don't know. It's too expensive, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, all right, cool. And then he's like, I'm going to figure it out myself. I'm like, dude, if you want to figure it out yourself, you would have fucking did it, 4 years ago, right? You've been edging me forever, right? Apparently he did do a bunch of approaches. I guess finally the shame got to him, and he did some approaches. And he said he did get a blowjob. So, hey, I mean, good for you. If you can figure it out yourself, right? But I guess it's a question of what does it mean to figure it out yourself? How successful do you want to be? Do you want to be, kind of good? Do you want to be just, better than you are now? Or do you want to be amazing? That's up to you, right? And you can figure it out yourself. Anyone can do this on their own. It's just a question of how fast you want to do it. Because if you have the resources, you can move a lot faster. So that's why you sign up for coaching. If you want to do it yourself, fine. Time is money. Which is more important to you? Do you have more time than money? Then figure it out. If you have more money than time, then pay for accelerated learning. But if in general you're like, it isn't worth the time or the money, well then okay. Then don't improve. I don't really know why you're watching up to this point, right? You probably already quit. You're probably not interested. But even someone who does want to be better will have this perspective to some extent. Everyone has it to some extent. Something is worth this much effort, but then anything more, not really worth it. Or this much effort, or this much effort, or this much effort. Right? Like I had a guy, he wants to do some coaching, and he's like, okay, well, da-da-da-da-da. And I know the guy, so I kind of offered him a little bit cheaper. And he's like, yeah, okay, well, I just spent $1,500 on getting a new tattoo. And I'm like, that's not going to help you, right? But he's in his like, I'm in my fuckboy phase. I don't care anymore. I'm just going to, go to the gym, grind, and get some bitches. And I'm like, you're spending $1,500 on a tattoo, and you can just put that in actually fucking learning and getting education. Like, what's wrong with you, right? So even people who don't have the money, you do really have the money. You just choose not to spend it on the things that you want. Or, we can apply it to anything, not just dating coaching. People are silly. But, you have the time, which also means you really have the money to pull it off. It's just a question of, which you have more of, either time or money, but they're pretty much the same thing. So, yeah, man, if you want to improve, use my trick of why are you fucking annoying? What is wrong with you? What is annoying about you? What's boring about you? And fucking change it. What exactly you change it to or what exactly needs to be changed, that's going to take time and effort to figure out. But the good starting place is, what isn't fucking cool about you, and then change it. And you're only limited by your stubbornness and your knowledge of what exactly to change about it. But, yep. Anyways, I've gone on long enough. If you're interested in coaching, sign up in the description below. I also have other shit in the description. Send me money, I'll give you wisdom in return. That's pretty much what we do. Great sales pitch, Hector. I am the best salesman in the world. All right, love you guys. Go fuck yourself. Bye.